I think we've heard incredibly structured and brilliant presentations. I could probably say that the nature of the subject is such that you tend to agree with everyone that you heard, and then you realize that the next one contradicts the previous one. And I think that this is, again, very much probably what is behind the difficulty that governments have had in the past few years to tackle the issues. So, well, that realization is not helpful, but let me try to move with some sort of very spontaneous reactions on what we have heard, because much of the analysis have, I think, been put on the table already by my colleagues. So the first thing is that we have to understand where we are in these negotiations on climate change and trade. Both are aimed at providing the world with some form of governance, international cooperative action to tackle those problems. And they seem to be resisted by a reality that tells us that in this globalized world, we have moved away from the centrality of these kind of top-down approaches adopted by national governments in resolving the issues. So we say, as a matter of principle, and it's sort of easy to say it, that the first best option would be to have a comprehensive, binding, again, top-down solution to the problem of climate, and have a regime that is all-encompassing and would then give guidance to the WTO, whatever that means, and I take it to mean by those that have proposed that sort of sequential path, that it would then be above the WTO, if you like, because it would be more recent, more specific, that's the presumption, and therefore, again, would be the primary reference on these matters. Then we know, and that's probably something that it's said but not with enough strength, that that's an ideal world. And the more we go, we move forward or not in the climate change talks, we realize that that sort of comprehensive top-down regime is, it would be very difficult to establish. And again, the difficulties, and a parenthesis that's similar in the WTO, stem from some very serious and hard realities on the ground. In the climate change side, nobody doubts or well, some people do, but the science that tells us that there is global warming, but taking that into sort of an operational, practical level, where we do understand the emissions that are embedded in products in a way that we can then use policy to try to regulate production and trade, particularly in that complex world where trade is now in a great part made up of these complex relationships between different actors in different jurisdictions producing intermediate goods and services and tasks and so on. So what I'm saying is that there's a complexity there that is very, very basic to resolving some of the issues related to climate and trade. Then there are these sort of big presumptions. There's this risky and what I call a risk and ambiguous presumption that all measures that are taken in the name of climate are environmental in the sense, for instance, that has been defined in the exceptions to the GATT. So those measures would be necessary to protect human, animal, or plant life or health, and they would be related to the conservation of exhaustible natural resources. We negotiators, when I was one, and we're trying to make linkages between this house here back in the early 90s and the definition of principles for climate change and for sustainable development, sort of took a shortcut and included language that borrowed from Article 20, both in the Sustainable Development Documents as well as in the Climate Change Convention. If you look at that language today, again, we try to sort of cut the discussion, if you like, and decided that we introduce the word climate as if it was equivalent to, again, the protection of human, animal, or plant life, or exhausting natural resources. And those are issues that will stand in any further sort of move forward, particularly in the kind of legality discussions that we're trying to have to try to come up with what is appropriate and constructive. So having said that, what can we do then to move on these issues? The first thing is, I think that we need clarity of purpose. And if you listen to the countries in the climate change negotiations, you would think that there is clarity of purpose. We need to do something to address climate change. But still, we know that the magnitude of the challenge is so large that every time we look at the details of what it would take to really curb emissions, say by 50% by 2040 or so on, what would lead us to those scenarios of 2 degrees or so, is so incredibly difficult. And it's made more difficult because, again, there is no progress on these negotiations. My sense is that, again, looking at what in the climate world people call the bottom-up approach, that it sort of emerged in a more official manner in Copenhagen and then was sort of put somehow under the umbrella of the UNFCCC in Cancun, and looking at the landscape of the trade world, this landscape that is now made up particularly or mostly of plurilateral trade agreements and other forms of cooperation and trade away from the multilateral system. We have to start thinking about solutions to these problems that are compatible again with that world. Joss has made a brilliant case on what is possible under current WTO law. I think that one principle that is many times forgotten in this House is that GATT law and WTO law was not meant to be written in stone. It was meant to be evolutionary, and there are mechanisms to evolve the law, to adapt it to the needs and to the requirements of governments and to the challenges that arise. But it's still, if you look at what we have and you think of it as written in stone, again, Joss has made the case of what could be possible to do outside of multilateral solutions. Let me speak quickly about an example that is recent. Yesterday, we launched with a number of countries behind the idea, as well as a number of large businesses that are involved in the renewable energy sector and other people in civil society, an initiative called the Sustainable Energy Trade Agreement. And the idea of that initiative fits very much with this new form of looking at, a new way of looking at what is possible and then to make it happen. Basically what we're saying is that if we look carefully at the production and trade of goods and services and technologies related to sustainable energy, and we look at the needs that we would have in the next few years, you look at the World Bank report, and it says that it states that, again, in order to reach those challenges of curbing emissions in the way that we have aspired to, we will need to deploy about 17,000 wind power generators every year for the next 40 years. And we would need to deploy something like 250 million square meters of solar panels, and so on. We look at where production is today and what are the barriers to innovation to that production. We understand that countries, not all countries, produce these goods. Then it's imperative that we have a robust market and rules at the international level for international trade on, again, those goods that are necessary to try to meet those challenges. But to do that, if we approach it in the multilateral way, then we have the EGS type of approach of solutions. We will spend time here thinking about what is single end-use products and what is double end-use products when it comes to one of the components of one of the pieces of equipment that we're thinking about. And many other complications, the trade-offs between different sectors, the trade-offs between the negotiations on NAMA and the other negotiations, and so on. And we'll probably never get there. So what I've come to conclude, again, is that we have to be very specific in the construction of these agreements. We have to understand exactly what it is that we need to do, and then get together with a coalition of those that are in the capacity to start moving forward and start building those agreements. Follow some of the guidance, again, that the JOS has provided, for instance, in the way that you will configure these agreements, but so that they can be sort of bulletproof, if you like, to the current rules. And design them in such a way that you could gather more and more the type of critical mass that you need so that the agreements are effective. I think I've taken my time up, but I wanted to just be more specific on the kind of solutions that I see coming forward. I just leave you with those thoughts that as we do the analysis on these issues, we need to understand very clearly and with great specificity what is it that we need to do in which areas with respect to which goods to really tackle the challenges that we have ahead, and then try to find as many ways as possible to move forward and not be stuck, not let ourselves continue to be stuck in the mud as we're now, or move by default as opposed to moving by design. So thank you.